In race 1 here at Grand Bend Motorplex, 2019 CSBK champion Ben Young sent a message to the rest of the 2022 field, leading the race from the starting line right through to the checkered flag. Can Alex Dumas, who finished second, or Trevor Dion, who finished third, catch up to Braveheart? Everyone, and welcome to Grand Bend Motorplex on the west coast of Ontario. This is race 2 of the 2022 CSBK season. Last season turned into a shootout between Ben Young and our champion Alex Dumas. With one race complete and 8 to go, it already looks like a replay of 2021. As GODERICH Toyota presents the Canadian Superbike Championships. Brought to you in part by BS Battery and Joe Rocket.
Our field heads out for their single warm-up lap in the very unusual configuration here at Grand Bend where the start is not the finish. That's the only track in Canada where we do that kind of thing. And the conditions are a little bit different today, Frank. A little bit overcast, a little cooler, and that's probably going to make tire wear slightly less of an issue. Pace has been very strong. In our first race, the pace was unbelievably fast at the front. There we can see the 3 Soar racers who took the front row, and Nickerson on the Honda, who's riding hurt, very strong in third. Looking at the rest of our grid, Tremblay back in action on a Kawasaki 1000 full-time, which means someone else is going to win Liqui-Moly Pro Sport Bike this season.
Yeah, and it ends the 9-race record that Tremblay had accomplished before the end of last season. As the riders take their positions for the start, let's check in with our Dunlop pit reporter, Hannah Streak.
Thanks, guys. Alex Dumas, number 1 on the Liqui-Moly Suzuki, is keen to take the lead here in race 2 after just coming short of first place in race 1. He is out of his element here, though, as he's never actually raced at this track before this weekend. Now that he's got a race under his belt, he is feeling more confident to take the trophy, so we'll see if he can do it. Back to you guys.
We get ready now as the Bickle lights start to come on. Of course, when those lights go off, as tradition dictates, we will start this race, and it's a long one, a long light. As the lights have gone off, the riders are away, and they were side by side. It is Dumas. Dumas has got the race lead. Young in second spot, and I believe that's Daly already, and then Dion. No, Dion's moved up into third spot as they head out on the back straightaway for their first run down towards the carousel.
So that was briefly side by side with Trevor Dion and Trevor Daly. That's not confusing at all, 2 TDs, but I believe it's Daly now in front, and I think Graham might be in the mix there too. Well, no, maybe Nickerson. That red and white bike is probably Stephen Nickerson.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely correct. And the neat thing about these doubleheader weekends, of course, Colin, is Dumas, who finished second yesterday, has a chance to redeem himself. What a beautiful wheelie by Ben Young coming off the starting line. I think that cost him dearly.
Yesterday, Dumas actually got bogged down and had to roll out of the throttle. This time it goes completely the other way. The gods of racing were smiling. Everybody else kind of bottlenecks. They all are a little bit careful. And Dumas just scoots right around the outside. The door opens. The track's clear. That's one of those moments when you're so happy about how the gods of racing are treating you.
And the 2 Trevors going at it back there. They were perfectly side by side at one point. Nickerson back having a look at things as well. Down into the infield they come, and Young is right with Dumas. He's not going to let him run away with this thing, that's for sure. Dumas has the point, that clear field of vision in a Canadian Superbike race, incomparable.
In the last race, Dumas was never in this position. He fought his way up to eventually earn a solid second, but now he's leading the race, and he is a guy who definitely learned. Yesterday was his first ever race here at this particular venue, and now he's leading, and definitely we've seen this show before, and it tends to be a very close close one.
Yes, indeed. Out onto the back straightaway they come again, and Dumas gets a very good drive there. I don't know whether Young hooked up as well as Dumas did. We'll find out when they get down to the carousel. Hard on the brakes now as they bank over to the right-hand side. The knee goes onto the ground, and Young has made up a little bit of distance, and of course, he's now entering his happy hunting ground.
Right behind, Daly and Nickerson are really having a battle there, and two completely different riding styles as we go to our drone shot. Watch for Nickerson. Okay, so Nickerson is now by himself in third, and Daly is tumbling down the order. So something has happened there coming out of the carousel on that particular lap. Let's look back and see if we can figure out what happened to Trevor, who of course does pack a great deal of action into just about every lap here at Grand Bend. He was spectacular yesterday. Okay, so here we are on board with our brand new camera on Trevor's motorcycle, and look at that.
Oh gosh.
Both feet in the air, and look at, if you look here in the ISO, he's off the track, and this is an interesting challenge, trying to get one foot on each side of the motorcycle when you've been in a situation where both feet were on one side. And in yesterday's Liqui Pro Sport Bike race, we saw Hornblower attempt the same little trick, and it did not go nearly as well as it went for Trevor, although Hornblower, I think, only ruined one or two cameras.
Dion running in fourth spot. Nickerson is in third, but up front it is Braveheart chasing Dumas again, and closing up again as they get into that carousel. I referred to this as happy hunting ground. You've seen him make some dramatic passes in this same area of this race course.
Well, it's the crucial spot, and we've seen lots of action in the spot we're coming into now that you call the bus stop, which is a really good name for it. Lots of unfortunate incidents have happened in this part of the track, but it's the carousel, that big, long right-hander that always seems to produce the decisive moment in these races at Grand Bend. We can come back on TSN. We'll see if Alex Dumas generates one of these decisive moments.
Closed captioning of the Canadian Superbike Series is brought to you by Liqui Pro Cycle, MotorcycleCourse.com, and Dunlop. We're back, and this is Grand Bend race number 2. Alex Dumas leading Ben Young as they head up onto the straightaway. That's a long straightaway, Colin. That is the highest speed recorded here at Grand Bend at the end of this straightaway right about now. We're working lap 4 of 20. We got a ways to go.
Yeah, and we haven't hit halfway, so there's not a lot of pressure to make a decision. And at this juncture, the smart thing to do is to pull away so that it's really a 2-horse race. The only guy still kind of in with the shout there at the back of the shot, you can see Stephen Mickerson on his DeWilt's Honda.
He has captured Dumas. Young, where did that come from? Young just left the brakes off, and he has taken the race lead, stolen it from our existing champion.
So I was wondering what Nickerson was capable of, and that was a very easy-looking pass. I think that Dumas just slightly left the door open, so now we're on board with Dumas looking back at second place Young. Young's really wide here, willing to use a little extra bit of the track, and you can see there that it's a focused pass, but not a desperate one, and I think there was just enough room, and he decided, okay, I'm going to lead for a bit. As I was going to say, there's no pressure this early in the race to make a decision. However, last race, Young did break the pack by turning in a bunch of really fast laps mid-race. Maybe that's the plan again, because he's pulling away right now.
Oh, is he ever? He's going for a ride as Ben Young. Braveheart, after making that incredible pass, I did not see that coming. However, previous to that, I saw him shopping a bit. He was having a look around, but man, he really uncorked one there, and he is on a flyer right now. Dumas will be working his you-know-what off to keep up with Braveheart.
Yeah, now the pressure's really on Dumas, because we don't know what Dumas' absolute pace is. He does not know the track nearly as well as Young. Of course, he had a race yesterday where he did quite well. But yeah, I still think Young right now believes he can break away, and that's a smart thing to do. And you in our race yesterday, he managed from the front in the second half of the race with great authority.
Indeed, he did. And look at the lap times now. We're already down into qualifying type lap times. Ben Young down into the 103s, and I think if I got it correctly, Dumas was at a 104 when last seen.
Yeah, you got it right, Frank, that the time came, and the pace there was very solid from Young. When he made the move, he immediately hammered down, pull away, and what he's trying to do is literally break Dumas' spirit. Now, interesting, hardly ever in the very short period of time these guys have been riding together has that ever worked. And look at this crazy action here.
Beauty pass there as Daly moving past Dion and coming very, very close to him. So Daly found himself shunted all the way down our leaderboard, down into about 5th or 6th at one point, and now he has really gone to work. He's got the blue shirt on. This is a working man. Essex as a wild child on the Suzuki, starting to make up some serious time here.
Yes, some serious Trevor versus Trevor action there, and you know, it never fails. Trevor comes out on top in these situations.
Indeed. Big crowd here. I just wanted to point that out. As the riders come out of the bus stop here, you get a better idea. That's the old drag strip grandstand there. That is not indicative of the number of people we have here at Grand Bend this weekend. An outstanding turnout in fans, and the racers are putting on a heck of a show to entertain them.
One of the interesting things that happened in our race yesterday was Daly hunting down Nickerson, and the speed at which he performed that task surprised everybody, maybe even Trevor Daly. And now he's in that exact same boat. He's maybe a little further back. If Dion and Garand, the boys, are smart, they'll go with, because Daly's mid-race pace has been really something. It's been very exciting to watch, and there you can see that he's sliding the back end, coming out of the carousel, and of course right here is where he almost went flying off his very own motorcycle. So again, you know, Trevor Daly packs a lot of action into an event. Well,
we've had a pass there going into the bus stop as well. I missed that one as we saw Tremblay gathering up Garand. Garand fighting a bit to stay even in the top 10 at this point.
Yeah, Garand faded back yesterday. We're looking for good things from Garand. He showed lots of pace in the last couple of years, but doesn't have a lot of results to show for it. Tremblay, on the other hand, is as solid a performer in race action as you can imagine, and we expect to see him doing quite a bit better as the season progresses, particularly at our next couple of rounds at Calabogie, where Tremblay is truly remarkable to watch.
And on to the back straightaway our riders go as we get ready to go to break. We'll be right back. Here we are back at Grand Bend, and we are halfway through this 20-lap National Championship Superbike race. And looking at the bus stop, as we call it, there's a shot of Trevor, I almost said Trevor Dion, Trevor Daly coming out to the front straightaway and out of the bus stop. And he is at speed now, running now in 4th spot and chasing down Nickerson. Like you said earlier, Colin, this is kind of reminiscent of yesterday.
And it is interesting, you know, we have the two TDs, both Trevors, and they're in the same shot here. But unfortunately, Dion looks like he's fading very gently back. And I think this might be partly a consequence of a conservative tire choice. And with the cooler conditions, maybe that didn't quite work out, as Trevor continues to use all kinds of pavement built for World War II bombers that was not ever part of the track that anyone thought you were going to race on, but Trevor seems to be enjoying it.
They're getting out into the rough stuff there, that's a certainty. And we've seen that screw up a few of the riders drive on that back straightaway. They go a little bit too far and don't get the grunt that they need.
Yeah, speaking of people who are very careful with where they go and how they do and don't change it up very much from lap to lap, Ben Young is a picture-perfect rider, and he is once again performing on a clinic level here. Typically, he has Dumas with him as we go on board, and we're watching the front suspension of that Willie Vass chassis-tuned BMW. This is actually quite interesting, Frank. This is their spare bike from last year that they basically never used, and due to a whole set of weird circumstances, this ends up being part of the package that they're going to use to start the season. They're hoping at our next round at Calabogie to have a slightly newer motorcycle. So isn't it nice when you use a bike you haven't used before and it's fast enough to win, and as it did yesterday?
It'll be interesting to see whether that M model is ready for the next race. Let's check in with Ben and see what his expectations are for 2022.
Well, the expectations for the 2022 Superbike Championship is to win it again. You know, last year was a comeback season after taking a year off, with 2 racetracks only, with 3 rounds. They were 2 very user-friendly racetracks, so it didn't make the field too diced up as it usually is in the past. So that will definitely separate the guys again, and I'm looking forward to having somewhat of a full series again.
Talking about separating the guys, that's definitely happened for the 2nd day in a row, and it's a very impressive effort from Young, because Dumas is not easy to shake, and typically these guys have been half a second apart at the most at the end of races. So again, Ben has at the track where he needs to dig in and get pretty much maximum points, except for being second fastest in qualifying, he will have done what he set out to do. Of course, our next two races are at Calabogie. We are on board with Dumas, unbeaten so far on a Superbike at Calabogie. So it's easy to guess that Dumas is going to make up some points in our next two rounds. But really, this is what Young needed to do to make sure that at a track where he has the advantage, he maximizes the advantage.
Well, we got a little bit of racing to go yet here, and remember yesterday how lap traffic factored into things. So what appears to be an insurmountable lead right now for Braveheart could very well evaporate very quickly. Nice shot there of Stevie Nickerson as he's putting in a great effort here, holding on to third, steadily holding on to third, and not quite aware probably that Daly's coming.
Well, the DeWilt Honda rider was good yesterday. He did fade late in the race, a little bit stronger this time, maybe a little bit more careful with his management, and maybe the tire situation with the cooler temperatures is helping him a little bit. Nickerson can find his pace quite quickly, but the problem is he wears out because of that issue with his knee that should have had surgery over the winter, but because of COVID and everything, it didn't happen. But he's doing everything he can do, and this is a very, very strong effort from the front row on his home track. We'll be right back here on TSN.
We're back at Grand Bend as GODERICH Toyota proudly presents the Canadian Superbike Championships. Brought to you in part by BS Battery and Joe Rocket. Back in action at Grand Bend, and we were wondering whether Daly could catch up to Nickerson. Guess what? He has caught up to Nickerson. I would say there's about less than a bike length now in the bus stop as Daly is all over him. Nickerson has got to get on guard here. He's got to guard those lines as Daly goes to the inside, and he has snatched away third spot right out of his back pocket.
And I think Nickerson just hesitated just a tad wide, didn't pick up the throttle, and Daly was watching so carefully. Like, that's a bold move to make the move in the middle of a sequence of bends like that. And here you can see they're getting into traffic, and you know what's on Trevor's mind? I want to make a couple of big moves, and actually didn't work out, and Nickerson's right back. Full marks to Nickerson. He's in there swinging, even though he's not 100% physically fit as we head onto the back straight. And there we can see Dion, who's not too far off, but sadly has faded out, which is unfortunate given his pole position.
And Daly and Nickerson going at it again. Daly had passed Nickerson. Nickerson passes him back, and now Daly takes back the position. They're shuffling around like a car dealer at Vegas. This is unbelievable stuff as Daly is really putting on a show here.
And we see this over and over in that sequence of bends where the local guys will just pour it into the carousel. If they're a little hot, they just let it drift wide. They don't panic. It doesn't hurt the lap. And there you can see Daly just shoving his way through traffic in a section. Tends to be one line, and you don't really want to do that. But Daly's on top of his game right now and is super confident. And Nickerson, I'm sure, is right behind him going, man, I don't need this. So we're on board with Nickerson nursing that sore leg. And here's Daly, who's just looking for the slightest hint of hesitation. And here it is right now. And it's incredible how Daly tightens up his line, picks up the throttle. You can bet the traction control's just banging away like crazy as they head through this section of track. And now we're on board with the Honda. And here's a beautiful move, and I'm sure Daly in a million years, who's super aggressive all the time, never imagined Nickerson would just filter it through on the brakes. But here you can see from on board with Nickerson, just too hot. The bike couldn't hold the line smartly. He eased up, ran a little bit wide. It didn't hurt him much, but good for Nickerson that he punched back, right? He made a good effort.
Absolutely. What a difference in riding style between those two riders as we are getting down into the towards the end of this race. We're working lap number 18 of 20, so only 2 laps to go, and a huge difference in the riding style. You talked about how smooth Braveheart is. Nickerson is also running on dimes, not so much Daly.
No, but what's funny is right now, you know what's on Daly's mind is I am going to go into that carousel so fast. I do not want to see that Honda ever again, because I guarantee you Trevor did not expect to see it that time, and that's what made that pass, even though it didn't really work. Really demonstrate a lot of determination from Nickerson that I want that podium spot, and if he doesn't get it, it's a shame. Daly, of course, is looking to complete a weekend with a lot of comeback riding.
Meanwhile, there's some action going on behind them as Garand and Tremblay have been bouncing back and forth. Garand moving up into 6th spot, now displacing the Shaker back into 7th.
Now, this guy you may remember, Frank. This is an interesting story. This is Ben Young, who's been leading this race for a very long time. We drifted a little bit away from his story because there was some interesting action going on. But when you get late in the race, you want to go and see what the leader's up to. What the leader's up to is pretty picture-perfect performance here at Grand Bend, and this is remarkably similar to yesterday, and I was surprised that Ben got quite as far ahead as he did yesterday, but this time obviously he knew what he was capable of.
This is a runaway.
Executed in a very similar manner, and I think Dumas, I don't want to say he's given up, but he thinks second points, that's probably the most he could have hoped for going into this weekend. So Dumas getting everything he probably thought was realistic, and of course it just points to the next two races at Calabogie, and the question is if Young can start digging into Dumas at that track.
My question is, can Nickerson catch back up to Daly? They had a terrific duel going on there as we are now into the final lap of this race and watching Ben Young, Braveheart, now work his way through the bus stop.
And yesterday, it seemed that Ben was hitting traffic at the worst times, but generally making the most of it. This time, he hasn't hit the big clumps all at once. Yesterday, he was in the middle of a huge mess of traffic on the last lap. This time, pretty much a clear track, and you've been watching your pit board, you know your pace, you're comfortable, and you look up ahead, there's nobody there, so you can pretty much relax and settle in and not have to worry about a last-minute antagonistic performance.
Well, Braveheart, of course, winning the #1 plate back in 2019, never had a chance to wear it, but I'm sure that he has that intention at the end of the 2022 season, and if the first two races of this season are any indication, he's on the right path.
Yeah, he just ran it in pretty gently in the carousel. That's very rare for Ben that he's that okay. So he is totally in his confidence zone, and deservedly so. And look at that stand-up wheelie as Chris Chappell offers the checkered flag, and it is received with glee.
As is that victory. There is a large contingent of Ben Young fans here, including a bunch of family that came over from Scotland to watch him race here, and I'm sure the folks at Van Dolder's Home Improvements are very, very happy with Braveheart.
Oh, people come over here from Scotland? That's interesting.
And there he is waving to the assembled. And boy, they got their money's worth this day.
And look at how long he's waiting for someone to celebrate with on the track. Okay, there we go. There's the fabulous twosome who've definitely stamped a mark of authority once again on the series. That they were the guys at the end of last season in September, and they are the guys in June.
Class act by Braveheart there, waiting even to congratulate Trevor Daly, knowing full well that he had a good run.
Look at the bottom half of the front-running group, and worth noting that Leon had another rough day on the ground again, so that's a shame. Then we look at the top 8, 4 BMWs in this grouping, and let's hear from our winner, Ben Young.
So we are here to greet Ben Young as he has come in from his second race win here on the first weekend of the 2022 CSBK season. Ben, here's a return to the winner's circle once more, to the top of the box. And this time around, you weren't fooling around. Boy, you put a beating on those boys.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. We did our homework last night to make this BMW even better than it was in race 1, and Alex put up a great challenge at the start, and I managed to get the run on him into 1 here, and once I got that, I put my head down, and the Van Dolder's home team BMW worked amazing. Thank you to my whole team, Hindle Exhaust, Barry Trim and Mold, Parts Canada especially for the HCC and Alpine Star. The crew worked awesome. Dunlop tires, Scott, Willie, my dad, my whole family, and Steve back in California. I'd say we kicked some butt, so that's good.
Well, let's look at a review of our recent butt-kicking events, and Ben Young has kicked to a 14-point lead, which is substantial, and again, perfect except for second in qualifying. It'll be interesting to see later in the season if that means something. Dion, now into 2 Superbike races, is a solid third, and will be interesting to follow his progress throughout the season.
On behalf of the entire CSBK crew, thanks for being with us. See you next time.